Hey, Vinyl Community Jeff back again with a little bit of fun over the weekend. We did some shopping in a part of town that I've actually never been to. So, yeah, this past weekend, the 4th of July weekend, my band had gigs over, well, one of the gigs on Friday was about an hour away. It's still kind of local, but because of the way you got to get there, it's 45 minutes to an hour. I mean, I have coworkers that live there. It's kind of in the country outside of the city area where we are. But honestly, I've never been to that town that I recall. I have been to pieces of it because we did run into a store on the way to where we were going. I'm like, oh, we've been here before because we had a friend that lived out there and just had forgotten that that was considered part of that. But anyway, hit a couple new thrift stores, found a couple things worth showing here. So, yeah. Let me show you here the, let's see, let's start with the grand poobah of finds. So, the first Goodwill store that we hit, you know, it had a lot of the same thrift store stuff. They actually had some box sets that I was thinking, I was wondering how they charge those because the albums are $1.99. But I was wondering, if you buy a box set, is it per record or is it just per title box set? Only because they had some things that were in really good condition that were like, they had a couple box sets by Beethoven, which I don't have any classical music on vinyl. And I thought for a minute, maybe I'll see, it'd be worth getting. And then they had like this Time Life set that was like 4 or 5 box sets on swing music, a lot of big band music and different eras of big band music. Again, in excellent condition, like somebody bought them and didn't really pay much attention to them. And I started thinking, you know, if they're $1.99 a set at like 4 albums, a couple of them looked like they were missing albums, which is why I didn't really think much harder. But anyway, then I ran across this, and it immediately caught my eye, and ultimately I ended up walking out with just this, because my wife bought some clothes, and I thought, you know, I'm just going to buy this. So this is an MCA compilation, sampler, whatever you want to call it, Sound Conspiracy. Do you see anything on there? So I'll tell you what caught my eye immediately. Do you see anything on there that catches your eye immediately? When I saw it, I thought, oh, what is this? And then I looked at the back and I'm like, well, this was released in 1971. Not only is it still got the shrink wrap, which is a little torn. I mean, it is open, the shrink wrap. The album itself looked unplayed. I mean, it was, and I've played it, and it sounds unplayed. It just, there's no noise. 1971. But what caught my eye, which hopefully maybe caught your eye, is it's got this band Chelsea on it. Now, of course, it's also got Glass Harp. It's got a bunch of other bands, Wishbone Ash. A bunch of good bands on here that I've heard of from the era. But the one that caught my eye immediately is the Chelsea. Now, if you don't know who they are, I'll tell you who they are, but I'm sure most of you know who that is. That's so this is 1971, and the Chelsea album was, what, 1970-ish? 1970, I believe, or 71, 70. Chelsea is the band that Peter Criss was in before he joined Kiss, like in 72, 73. Yeah, so I saw that night. Can you imagine walking into a thrift store and finding the Chelsea album? Those suckers are expensive, but I couldn't imagine that. But that would have been cool. But this is the closest thing. And then Glass Harp is the early, this is like the first, this is from the like first release, or maybe, did it say this is their first time? Glass Harp is the band that Phil Keaggy was in. He went on to do a lot of other stuff that I've got. But anyway, Chelsea was what caught my eye. I've heard of a lot of these other bands, Fanny Adams and stuff, but that's what caught my eye. And so again, I said, okay, I got to get this because not only is it in excellent condition, but I don't have anything Chelsea related on vinyl. So I do have the album digitally, and it has been reissued on CD and stuff. But to get a vinyl copy of that Chelsea album, you know, tends to be hundreds of bucks. All right, so that's all I walked out there with. That, you know, the toying with the idea. I'm like, do I really want to have the clutter of those box sets? Listen to them once maybe, but, you know, I kind of thought they were neat and they were in great condition. So, moving on. We went through and going around town trying to find things to do. Like I said, it's kind of country out there. There's a little town, but there wasn't a whole lot there. Went to one store that was closed, blah, blah, blah. Ended up saying, okay, well, let's just head back over to where the gig area was and find our way there. Passed by another Goodwill at that point and went in there and started flipping through. And that's the one I'm like, hey, I've been to this one before. And so I went in there and I found a Pieces of Dream album. Now, at first I was thinking, because they don't look quite the same, but I told my wife, I said, you know, I am right. Pieces of Dream was a band we saw in concert like 2 months ago. And she said, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, here's one of their albums from the 80s. They've been through a bunch of lineups there, but this just didn't look anything like the guys in the band. So I wasn't sure if I'm getting the same album. So then I looked it up. I said, okay, it is the same band. This is just, I don't know. They had a different lineup at the time. Again, it was in excellent condition. And again, I was thinking, yeah. So Pieces of a Dream, we saw them in concert. Jazz band, contemporary jazz band, funk. They had some funk, fun stuff. It was a great concert. And so, anyway, I was like, I knew they had some out. They've been around since the 80s, and they've had albums out on vinyl, and they're still around, and we saw them, and it was great. So, grabbed that, kept flipping, saw Joe Sample. Again, I have a one or two of his albums. A jazz sax player, really into the sax side of contemporary jazz sax. And this is another album by him. And again, this one is still in the shrink wrap, open, but still in the shrink wrap, and the vinyl was in excellent condition. And so, I thought, yeah. So we added that one in real quick. And then we moved on, went around, blah, blah, blah. Went somewhere else. I had to find something at a store. We stopped. And then there was a pawn shop. And I'm like, I have not been in a pawn shop in many years. Because everything nowadays, at least since I got back into records, it's like thrift stores. And I'm like, do pawn shops, in the day, I used to go to pawn shops to buy CDs. Because they had them. And I'm like, do they even sell records? There's a couple pawn shops around here that I've never been to. Because most of the pawn shops around here, you would go to it, they're advertising as either, gold or guns. It's like, those are the two main things. And you never really I don't stop to think, maybe they have records. So I wasn't sure, but we had to stop at this place anyway. So we went inside, and they had a bunch of records. They were in some pretty rough shape. But I did find Sladist, a best of Slade. The album looks kind of dirty, but I think I can clean it up. The cover is pretty beat up, but I never find Slade in the wild in any good condition. So I went ahead and grabbed that. Again, they were under $2. I grabbed that. And then they had Talk Show by the Go-Go's. The cover is all chewed up and everything, but the vinyl itself looked brand new. A couple fingerprints, easy to clean. And so I'm like, okay, we'll take that home. They had a Michael Schenker album, which was in really bad shape. Looked like somebody chewed the whole side of it off. But they didn't have a whole lot. They had some good titles, but in bad shape. But some stuff that was pretty good. So I'm going to have to start popping my head into pawn shops more just to make sure that someone places around here may carry them. But that was it. It was some fun stuff. Hit 3 or 4 different stores and found a handful of decent stuff for just a couple dollars. So I brought it home with me. And that's it for this one. And I'll see you later. Rock on and rock hard.